Okay, well, here we are in front of the Belarus Bank, the National Bank of Belarus. We are on Vulitsa, Pervoe, a little after May Day, and it means 1st of May Street. In this whole area, my ancestors dwelled in various houses, small and medium. The Gorovitz family and the Kantrowitz family. Their old shtetl houses have been replaced by public housing here. A note about the name of the street, I forget the name before, what it was before the war, but a comrade, I guess with the sense of poetry, renamed the street the reason we shall soon see. Across from the bank is public school number 1, where one of our historians works. There's a track and a garden that just, I think, was installed, if I'm not wrong. The track may have been previous, I'm not sure, but the garden, I think, is new, I believe. So, this area, my grandmother may have had a house here also. There were 4 shul, or temples here, Jewish temples, including, I believe, the main stone market synagogue. So if we proceed over. When the capitalists came in their German fascist form, we have more tributes. One of the first acts after the invasion was in July of 1941. They carried out an Aktion, I believe it was called, whereby they forced the local peasants to dig shallow trenches in 2 spots that I've mentioned, along the one along the Snov Road and one in the back of the Radziwill Park, where they proceeded to murder approximately 3,100 to 3,300 Jews. Prior to that, they had gathered them in the Bazarnaya Markt, now the town hall, en masse, and people panicked. They, had foreboding, and I read the story of some old woman who had a very good reputation in the community. I believe she was a teacher or something. She was very old, like my great uncle Rachmel, and she was unfortunately, I guess they laid her out in a bed or something, where she was too old to really move. But she was trampled to death in the panic before everyone was just marched or trucked to the Snov Road and then summarily shot. The survivors, as so happened with these capitalists, their German fascist brothers, basically constructed a ghetto concentration camp with barbed wire, and they packed in approximately 700 souls for, I guess, a period of, what was it, mid-July, I guess, until the end of October, precisely October 30th, 1941, when the remaining Jews, probably most of whom were Zionists, learned that they would shortly be liquidated, so rather than be shot, So, rather than be shot, they rebelled. So, they mounted oh, this is 1942, huh. I think that may be incorrect, actually. I think it should have been, oh no, I was incorrect.
It is correct.
The initial, yeah, this is correct. So the initial action was October 30th, 1941. And I believe it was the winter when the fascists, the Wehrmacht, tried to breach Moscow. They were repulsed by the Soviet people in the Red Army in the winter of 1941. And during this whole period, basically the capitalists used the remaining surviving Jews as slave labor, the tradesmen basically, the artisans, to manufacture for war production. Then I guess in June 1942, my mistake, the surviving Jews, I guess led by zionists, I believe, learned that what their fate was to be, and rather than go passively to slaughter, they rebelled. And yeah. So they rebelled. Everyone except 20 were then killed, but they had a machine gun. They mounted it on the second floor of the synagogue in the women's section and gunned down a number of fascists. They had Molotov cocktails and knives. Most of the Jews remaining in the ghetto were then murdered by the fascists, and 20 escaped to go to, I guess, ultimately the Kopyl Forest, where they became partisani and hooked up with the Red Army eventually. What else? I've read, this is documented in, among other sources, but primarily Shalom, Cholawski's book, Soldiers from the Ghetto, I believe it's called. He's a Zionist, was a Zionist, and one of the leaders of the uprising. And he noted that there were peasants. This is a bad taste in many Jews' mouth, or, that basically peasants were some peasants were jumping up and jeering as the fascists killed Jews, and then were, I guess, afterwards looting Jewish homes. But generally this was not the sentiment of all peasants, and it's also in the context of class hatred. There were probably they associated Jews with some of the rich Jews, and so in a very horrible genocidal situation, survival situation too for everyone, not just Jews. There were some people who were morally repugnant. So, but at any rate, So, there's a couple of poems I think are relevant to the situation. They're by Bertolt Brecht, the German communist poet and shaper of the modern, ironically, the modern German language, of which Yiddish was, I guess you could say, linguistically close in many ways. And I quote from, this is dedicated, I guess, to all of the yuppies and those who are satisfied in the West with things as they are, or, you know, do not want to change things to, say, a better world, and who may yet cause another, you know, wave of murders, or you could say are even doing such today by their inaction and uncaring. The poem is from Brecht's The Buddha's Parable of the Burning House. Lately I saw a house, it was burning. The flame licked at its roof. I went up close and observed that there were people still inside. I opened the door and called out to them that the roof was ablaze, so exhorting them to leave at once. But those people seemed in no hurry. One of them, when the heat was already scorching his eyebrows, asked me what it was like outside, whether it wasn't raining, whether the wind wasn't blowing perhaps, whether there was another house for them, and more of this kind. Without answering, I went out again. These people here, I thought, need to burn to death before they stop asking questions. Truly, friends, unless a man feels the ground so hot underfoot that he'd gladly exchange it for any other, sooner than stay, to him I have nothing to say. But we too, no longer concerned with the art of submission, rather with that of not submitting and putting forward various proposals of an earthly nature and beseeching men to shake off their human tormentors, we too believe that to those who, in the face of the approaching bomber squadrons of capital, go on asking too long how we propose to do this and how we envisages that, and what will become of their savings and Sunday trousers after a revolution, we have nothing much to say.